Wildness from Awesomeness TV, where we really live and breathe youth culture every day. And we started this business really because it wasn't enough to just live and breathe youth culture, learn from our audiences and our creators. We wanted to understand more broadly this generation and what defines them. So we underwent one of the largest studies on Gen Z to date, and we actually studied 12 to 24-year-olds across the country. And we did so through ethnographic research across every corner of the country and every space really in between as well. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours spent interviewing this generation. And then we verified our findings through quantitative research, a very large study. 3,000 were surveyed across the country. Again, everything in the US. And what we found was extraordinary. It was the ability really for this generation not just to drive innovation or the future, which is really what I led at Razorfish for over a decade through partnership. And what we found was their ability to actually change the way all people communicate and behave. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit today. I don't know how long ago you guys went to prom, but it is prom season. I don't know what you wore. I wish I wore a dress that cool, honestly, but I did not. But anyway, if you were in the 80s, you may have looked something like this if you went to prom at that time. If you were a millennial, you might recognize yourself in this photo, maybe around 2002. These poor millennials, they look so optimistic and hopeful, but they had no idea what was in store for them with the big crash and all of their challenges. The millennials were criticized for being, if anything, too straight, playing it too straight, being too good. But I bet your prom picture didn't look like this. I love this photo of Jaden Pinkett Smith because he's wearing a skirt, if you notice. And if you did wear a skirt and you're a guy, more power to you. I think you're a precursor to all of this. What's important about this photo is that this generation is already rewriting the rules. They're transcending the borders of gender, of culture, of race, and they're embracing differences in a way that we've unseen in the past, in the way that is unseen in the past. And what we started off doing with our research is we said, where did youth culture come from? Were they always so powerful? Because we are obsessed today, especially as marketers, we're obsessed with youth culture. And where did this come from? Was it always this way? Well, it turns out it wasn't. Youth culture is really an after effect of the Depression, which I had no idea before I started this research and before I came to Awesomeness TV. We kicked them out of the workforce during the Depression to free up jobs for their parents. And what do? They socialized, they hung out with their friends, they went to movies, they listened to the radio, mainstream sources of media and entertainment, film, television, radio. Until today. Because that's how it was, and it is not how it is today, and it won't be how it is tomorrow. The defining characteristic of this generation, it's not just the internet or technology. It is those things, but it's their relationship to culture, and they don't simply consume culture because they make it and they create it. This is a generation of culture creators. They're weaving together media, commerce, entertainment, technology into a powerhouse of influence, and they are already changing business and commerce. They are already starting their own businesses, whether it's an Etsy store or whether it's a tech startup worth millions of dollars. They're catalysts of this cultural revolution that we are all experiencing. Every single minute on the internet, 500 hours of video are uploaded and shared to YouTube. And over 500,000, 528,000 roughly, photos are uploaded onto Snapchat, largely of which is being created by this generation, by Gen Z. 27% from our study are creating and sharing an original video on a weekly basis. And when we compare that to all of the adults, probably many of you in this room, only 26% of the entire adult population has ever shared an original video. 26% has ever. These guys do that on a weekly basis. And while they embrace this new visual language that is incredibly sophisticated through emojis and photos and video, They're able to communicate an enormous amount of information in poetry, they told us. We kept hearing this in our ethnographic research and our interviews, that they wrote poetry. And this really surprised me because I don't know, when you were a teen, I don't know how many of you knew people who wrote poetry and published it and shared it to the world. I didn't know that many. But this generation, on a weekly basis, we found 20% were writing poetry or prose. If they were really, really aggressive. But it made sense to us because, in fact, this is the generation with the shortest attention span in history. So, right, you can pack a lot of meaning into 140 characters. And so the opportunity for brands here is to challenge teams to create content and experiences that are with new formats that are as powerful as poetry. Their new cultural currency is also very, very different. They told us, with surprising maturity, the importance of failure. They said 91% told us that failure was an important part of life, an important part of the process, rather. Mira said it really well. She said, failure is a great thing. It teaches you what is good, what to do, what not to do. If you fail at this, then the next thing you know, you'll find something else you can do better. You're not going to fail at everything, because failure is a natural part of the creative process. They embrace failure projects and publicly share them with the world. Millennials and Gen Z, we hate to fail. We hide all of that, which is why we love Snapchat, or why we love Instagram and Facebook, right? But this generation, they were the first to embrace Snapchat because they like what's real. And that's why being unique was incredibly important to them. They kept telling us over and over again, weird is cool, weird is cool. And what we found is that 94%, it wasn't just weird to kind of be unique and stand out and be different and kind of get attention in a narcissistic way, which I think the millennials were kind of more accused of being. But it was actually about being true to themselves, being true to their unique expression, right? And that was what was important to them. They explain it really well in this video here. And the important part of being unique is also the embrace of other people's differences. They actually revere differences among other people. It's not just that they are the most inclusive and most diverse generation in history, it's that they revel in these differences and celebrate them. Oops. I don't know if the video is going to play. Oh. I don't think we have the video. Sorry about that, guys. It's a great video. You have to trust me. But basically what they say is they embrace differences. They celebrate them. They look past race. It's not that they don't see race, but they aren't judged on race. And part of this being unique and is the fact that real life experiences still rule for them. They really value what is authentic and what is human. And what we've seen through our research is actually that shared experiences and life events with shared passions are increasingly important to this generation and to all people, in fact. Over the past 15 years, concert sales have actually tripled in revenue, despite the fact that the music industry is crying about how poorly it's doing. And for the first time in history, this generation, I think Nassim was actually talking about how this generation really grew up with mobile devices, and they were tethered to them. And this generation, for the first time, we're seeing this phenomenon, which is that 9 in 10 are taking intentional breaks from their phone. That also surprised me because I don't know about you guys, but what I observe are teens tethered to their mobile devices. You see them all hanging out, sitting around at a table. No one's looking at each other. They're all looking at their phones, right? But that's precisely why they need to take intentional breaks, and they're aware of it, which is also surprising. And because they are these culture consumers, they consume more content than any generation in history, they have more devices than any generation in history, and they multitask more than any generation in history, in addition to, of course, having the shortest attention spans. They consume more content than any generation in history. But 50% have either never had cable, have cut the cord, or plan to cut the cord, because television means something entirely different to this generation. They prefer streaming over cable or commercial TV, and what's more is they actually prefer subscription services. They'd rather pay than watch commercials. than the free streaming commercial broadcasts or services. They'd rather do that. And in addition, they actually, 0 and 10 would keep their television if left with only one device. And Mira and Rachel explain that here, how they gave up their television. I don't know if this video is gonna play, we'll see. No, it won't. But they do watch YouTube daily. 9 and 10 are on YouTube. Why? Because they embrace what's real. These celebrities are real, and they are collaborators with them. They have good hair days, they have bad hair days, they go through heartbreak, disappointment, and adversity, and they overcome their challenges and share that, which is an inspiration to this generation. They create entire fandoms out of shared experiences, shared passions, and shared appreciation. And these are like memes. They're entirely new creative expressions where they network and connect with each other. But they do want to hear from brands. While they will do anything to avoid commercials, they actually find most appealing branded and sponsored content from brands. They want to hear from you in a way that is relevant and that has a beat and a pace to it. And they're taking everything that they learned from you and weaving together their creative tools to wield their incredible powerhouse of influence. 91% are sharing their opinions on products with parents. And I know that comes as no surprise from any parent in this room, because they tell us what phone to buy, where to go on vacation, what to watch, and how to watch. And they're already culture capitalists. They are already starting their own businesses. 60% are already working, and 38%, almost 4 in 10, believe they are going to invent something that changes the world. Like Conrad Kramer, who was a Thiel Fellow, he actually won the pen competition, the pen hackathon, when he was a high schooler. And today, over half of the winning teams at college hackathons include high schoolers. Why? Because they have proven to be incredibly creative coders, because they've had these capabilities since birth. Or Beth Reekles, who is an author and also in media and entertainment. All she could find were books about vampires and werewolves. She was tired of that, so she wrote her own book and broke Wattpad's record-breaking success with 40 million hits. She now landed a 3-book deal. She's only 15. But it's everyday kids too, just like Medusa. She wanted to start a club at school about art and fashion, and they wouldn't let her. They rejected it, so what did she do? She started a magazine called Things in Boston that's all about fashion, music, culture in the entire Boston area. She's already published 7 issues. She's only 16 years old, and she's in high school. It is a beautiful, glossy magazine. There's a great article about Grimes this month. I encourage you to read it. So the opportunity for brands is to be more real, to experiment, to allow yourselves the failure, because if you're honest and if you're real, they don't want the polish. They will forgive you for your mistakes. To collaborate, invite them in and listen to them, because if you don't, they're going to build their own products. And guess what? The barriers to doing business are so low today that even kids can start their own successful businesses and guide them. They're looking for brands to guide them through life, to be the expression of humanity that they're seeking, and to lead them. This is a generation of culture creators.